everybody? It's David J. Murphy, host of Around the Lens. Welcome to another exciting episode of Roundtable Discussions with my co-host, Zach Roberts. Hello, Zach. How are you?
Hello, I'm good.
Great to have you. Joining me this week are two amazing guests. I can't wait to dig into their brains and find out all the great things they're keeping in there. Michael Brochstein and Scott Strazzante. Scott is coming back to us. He's been on the show in the past, so great to have Scott back. Gentlemen, can you go ahead and kind of give us a little breakdown of who you are and your experience? We'll go and start with you, Scott.
All right. Thanks for having me, Dave and Zach. Yes,
Welcome
I've
back.
been a newspaper photographer for 40 years. I just finished my 11-year stint at the San Francisco Chronicle and decided to move to Long Beach, California. And I'm now freelancing if you got any work for me. But I grew up in the Chicagoland area, actually in Chicago. And my family was just crazy big sports fans. So we went to all the games. We had season tickets for the Bears and the Cubs and the White Sox. And so I would say, 4 days out of the week, I was at a sporting event with my family. And that really you know, kind of started my interest in sports photography, but not as a way of like, I thought it'd be a career, but I just loved looking at sports photos. And like most kids in the 70s, I subscribed to Sports Illustrated and put the covers up on my wall and put the swimsuit issues up on my wall. And it just kind of really, for me, I just could not get enough sports. And then I went to college to be a tire dealer. My dad was a tire dealer in the south side of Chicago. So I went to a liberal arts college in Wisconsin to be a business major. And my junior year, I stumbled into a gallery show of photojournalism by a Chicago Tribune photographer at the time, Paul Giroux. And I was just like, this is what I want to do with my career. I'd photographed little things here and there just with my dad's Canon AE1, but never really thought of it as a career. But when I saw his work, I was just like, this is what I want to do. And somehow at a school that had no photo program, I ended up becoming an art major and then got a job at a small neighborhood paper in Chicago upon graduation and just learned by making mistakes and ended up at the Chicago Tribune for 13 years. And then my last 11 at the San Francisco Chronicle. I started out just wanting to do all sports. The dream was to work for Sports Illustrated, but I ended up loving photojournalism. And as time went on, I loved doing long-term documentary storytelling. I ended up doing a project on a farm that became a subdivision that spanned 27 years. And I've done a lot of work in stadiums. I love stadiums. I did an 11-year project on the Oakland Coliseum. I photographed the last year of the Chicago Stadium before it got torn down. So I just love kind of the stuff that happens around sports. Of course, I photograph the action, but there's just something about the culture of sports and the places it's played and the people who go there. So I almost really kind of have morphed into almost like a street photographer at sporting event type of thing. Although as a newspaper photographer, as you all know, you just do everything. But I've absolutely loved my 40-year career. I'm as motivated as I ever was. So I'm excited to be in a new location. The place I live now is going to be literally maybe a 30-second walk from the Olympic beach volleyball venue in 2028. And there's going to be, I think, 5 or 6 other events in Long Beach. So I'm definitely hoping to hook up with someone to shoot the Olympics then. The only assignments I have so far is I'm going to shoot the World Cup for European Press Photo. So I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully going to get my freelance career rolling soon. But if not, I'll just sit around and watch Around the Lens. What else?
There you go. We'd appreciate your patronage. That's awesome. Yeah, I was actually thinking about going to the LA Olympics. Yeah, because it's in the United States. I mean, it's easy to just go cross country and get to
Like
it. So
there's softball in Oklahoma City. There's going to be soccer all over the country. So
wow.
they're definitely spreading it out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I'll definitely have to go check something out. Awesome. All right, and our other guest is a newcomer to the show. Welcome to the show, Michael. Tell us a little about yourself.
Hi. I have a little meandering career. In fact, it's a couple careers. I took a black and white darkroom class when I was 11 years old in summer camp, became hooked, especially when the print came up in the developer. I thought that was really neat. So I went home, built a little darkroom, high school newspaper, college newspaper, but I never thought I could actually make a realistic career, like actually earn enough money to, live. So, and I was interested in computers, so I have a couple of degrees in computer science and an MBA, and I spent a long time working in IT. And after my last job, I got laid in my last job, I got laid off, and I started getting photography jobs. First event work, portrait headshot, and then I started shooting for fun initial. The first time, campaign events, Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania in 2016, and I enjoyed that. I looked at my images. I said, not too bad, some plausible. And I started going to a whole bunch of different events, getting in his media, and both parties, etc. And I found wire services that would distribute my images, which they did, and they still do. And I found out how to get access. I'm originally from New York City, how to get access to stuff in DC, some conferences, and eventually the White House and the Capitol. And I'm really interested in national politics and public policy. So it's just a great place to be. New York's a great place also, but national politics doesn't happen there. So for the last bunch of years, I have an apartment in DC. I also have a place in New York still. And I spend most of my days at the Capitol, some White House conferences, some protests, and I'm enjoying it. And I enjoy the stuff. And it's just challenging. It's just you earn a living in this business, but otherwise, I enjoy the work.
Awesome. That's great. Well, it's good to enjoy the work because that is something you want to be able to do. They say if you enjoy your job, then you're not really working, right? So
Exactly.
good on you there. Well,
Still got to pay the
awesome.
rent, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. Got to pay the rent. Uh, anyways, the reason we brought you on, Michael, and what kind of drew me to you, obviously, was your post on LinkedIn talking about covering the State of the Union, right? And, we've had folks talk about lots of different events on this show over the years, but I don't think we've ever had anyone talk specifically about the State of the Union. So I really wanted to kind of dig in first with you and kind of get your take on shooting such a massive, important event like that, right? It only comes around once a year. And it's just, one of the most watched events of the year, especially of that day. So talk to us a little bit like kind of what goes into preparing to shoot the State of the Union. What's it like when you get on the ground there? What's it like to cover it? And then kind of what, is your post-processing turnaround when you're getting your work out? Or is it all done kind of on site?
So I spend most days at the Congresses in session. I'm at the Capitol covering hearings and press conferences. So it's not like a new place I went into just for the State of the Union. I've been covering I've been steadily there since 2019, virtually every day that Congress is in session. So I know the people, I know the physical place. So that's not new or novel. Though what is novel about the State of the Union is first you have, not just the president and vice president and all of Congress and the Supreme Court and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So the security is very tight and everybody wants in. So, and every member of Congress gives out tickets, gets a couple tickets to give to whoever they want. It's a very sought after event to go to. I mean, it's a special event. So basically you can't just, even if you're credentialed at the Capitol, which I am, you can't just walk in. You have to be shooting for a particular news outlet, and you apply. And generally, if it's a recognized outlet, they'll figure out a way to get you in. There's an excellent staff that works specifically with still photographers at the Capitol. They've been there for decades. Varies, of course, the length is four of them, and they know the business inside and out as far as this is concerned. So in preparation, there's two types of there's three actually three types of places you could be as a photographer at the State of the Union, maybe four now that I'm thinking of it. One is not in the room at all. You're in Statuary Hall, which is almost like the spin room with a million stand-ups, video setups for members of Congress and others to come and give their opinion on something. And a number of photographers are stationed there. I've never done that. Just wasn't interested. Maybe one year I'll do that. The other is on the floor of the House, the House chamber. One photographer is like a pool photographer for all the other photographers because it's crowded. One this year it was Kenny Holston from the New York Times. It's generally somebody who's recognized as being very experienced and working for one of the very major news outlets in this country. Then the other positions, which most of us do, and when I say most, there's probably 30 photographers in the room. So it's a lot of photographers. And I think you saw the picture I posted is about 25. Let's say there's a few people missing from that photo. when I looked at it, including the person who covered it from the floor. So there's two types of positions. There's a roving position and a fixed position. And then even there's subcategories. A rover, I'm sorry, a rover is there's a group of photographers that come in that are rotated between the center. Everybody's in the gallery. Only one is on the floor, Kenny. So we're in the gallery, aka a balcony, and we rotate every 5, 10 minutes or so between let's say the right corner, the center, and the left corner, which is great because you then get three different perspectives. You can't use a monopod, so you're traveling light. Something you can hold over your head. If you're shooting over the person in front of you, unless you happen to be in the front. Um, Straightforward. I mean, so I did that my first year, and that was an interesting experience. Then there are fixed positions, which are basically what it sounds like. You're in one place the whole time. And I guess there's two types. One is the major places get the opportunity to plug in their laptops and could edit and file straight from there. Um, the rest of us, not so much. Um, and then you can subdivide it even more. Some fixed positions you can easily walk out, meaning you're right by a stairwell, you can walk out. You can't come in back in, but if you want to leave before it's over, that's possible. Others, you're stuck there the entire time, which is relevant if you want to file. If you first don't want to edit and file, you can't really necessarily, you may not be able to do that so easily if you're in a fixed position with no Ethernet. The Wi-Fi isn't great. Everyone's in the room. So there's pros and cons. So this year I was in a fixed position, which um, with easy access to a door to leave. So I left about an hour and 20 minutes into it. I waited that long because I was waiting. I mean, there's a few things you look at. You look at you can't see eyes blink in real time. See that's just take a lot of pictures. Fortunately, President Trump doesn't blink much. You wait for gesture, um, and whatever position someone's mouth is. If you're doing a still photo of somebody who's speaking, you don't want to position. You want something that looks relatively natural. And then you just have to shoot a lot of pictures because we don't see fast enough to see in real time what a position someone's mouth is. This year, President Trump did not gesture a lot. So I stayed a full hour and 20 minutes because the pictures, the first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes looked the same. So there's not necessarily an advantage, but he wasn't gesturing a lot. So I spent an hour and 20 minutes there because I was waiting for gestures. And he just this gesture did not gesture much this year. That's life. But in a fixed position, you could bring a larger lens because you're not moving around. Because remember, you're holding this in your hand over your head. You probably all know a 400 2.8's not a little lens. So this year, I thought I was going to end up being a rover. They switched me. So I brought my 100 to 400, which is like a 7200, a 3 pound 7200. And that's easy to hold over your head. If I knew I was going to have a fixed position, I would have brought my 400 and a monopod. You can't use a monopod when you're a rover, but you can use it if you're in a fixed position. So it worked out. I've learned from previous years using the 100 to 400. They have the light, they turn on TV lights, as they call them, which are built into the room. So it's fairly bright, at ISO 3200 at 5.6. I'm a little underexposed, but it's totally savable. I'm using a Nikon Z8. It's totally workable, and I've done that a few times now. And that's basically, so I left after an hour and 20 minutes. And I went back to one of the rooms where still photographers work out of. It's the Senate Press Photographers Gallery. They have two rooms, and I went back to one of the rooms and edited and filed. But the only downside of the State of the Union, it's a very long day. Starts at 9 o'clock, and I'm in there at 8:30 in the morning shooting my regular hearings and press events. We call pressers, and then there's a few hours between that and when the State of the Union begins. And they bring pizza in for us. The gallery. That's nice. And so you get there at 8:30 in the morning and you don't leave until midnight or later, a lot of times. Unlike New York City, I'm a New Yorker, the subway stops running at around midnight or so. So it's the one time a year I have to take a taxi home as opposed to taking the subway. It's not the end of the world once a year. But that's like one unique aspect of the event. Not that that's the least interesting part of the event that I take a taxi home, I'm sure. Uh, that's really it. If you have any questions, ask because I'm not sure what you're interested in exactly.
Well, I'm curious. You said when you're in there, you're being moved every few
If you're a
minutes.
rover, you moved every 10 minutes. I forget what the rotation is. And the group of, let's say, 6 or 8 photographers come out a door, get moved to the door, let's say in the corner or the center or whatever I mean, the first year, I think there were 3 groups. This year, I think there was only one rover group. I guess it's a matter of how many photographers they have, how many to make rovers, for whatever reason, it is.
Yeah, and so you choose whether you're a rover or
Well,
a
I
static.
requested a rover, and it just the numbers didn't work out, so they gave me a fixed position, which on some levels is easy. You sit on the steps, although there are some people, some news outlets that get an actual seat. It's sort of like a stadium, like a movie theater or stadium seat, not a recliner with a power. Your legs come up, but a basic seat with cushion. But you sit on the step. I even learned. So you all have used or know what a turtle is, or a stool, a low folding plastic stool. Yep, assuming
Yep.
you've all used this 100 times. So we seem to call it a turtle locally. For whatever reason, it's like looks like a turtle maybe, but they're usually black. And I know the low ones, like the 9 or 11-inch ones, fit on a step, so you can sit on that, which actually works well. Whereas the larger one, the 16-inch ones, which maybe more comfortable and taller, they would otherwise fall off the step. So that doesn't work. So I've learned all this from being in that room multiple times. I've also when a Speaker of the House is elected, we're in the room covering that, watching the vote, which is pretty tedious to watch 435 names be called out one by one. It's just whatever. But in any case, so I've learned.
So how many years have you done the State of the Union, and what do you prefer, being roving or being static?
Um, I'll tell you 2 quick stories. I once was in a fixed position with no ability to leave the room. It just because there's all these people sitting, it's crowded. I can't just step over people. It's a live event. So, and the TV camera and there's a TV camera on the ground floor, the House chamber floor, which has a boom. And he was supposed to keep the boom lower than the balcony. But that year, the guy did not. So I had a windshield wiper back and forth constantly as I was shooting. And I caught a few good pictures of it, so I was able to show the gallery staff, and they made sure that the next year the boom operator followed the rules as to what he or she was supposed to do. Um, so the rover position gives me more perspective. So I like that because you get, from one side, the center, and the other side. It isn't that the sides are different, but the center and the side, are 2 different perspectives. So I filed, I think, 23 photos. I don't remember how many photo I filed because if you're in one position, you only basically get the close up, the president hopefully gesturing with interesting gestures. There weren't a lot. You get like a pulled back a medium, and then you try to, let's say in a wide shot, you try to get the whole room. So there aren't a lot of shots. At least if you're a rover, you have more options. On the other hand, if you're in a fixed position, you're using like a 400, you can get close and you can get very higher quality images. You can use wider apertures, and the lenses, obviously the big glass is extremely high quality, and you get excellent stuff. I like the rover a little bit. I figured the rover, I'm guaranteed the ability to leave early. Because if I get a fixed position and I'm stuck there this year for an hour and 49 minutes was the length of the speech, plus you get there early, another, so many minutes early, or an hour early, whatever. So a rover, I could shoot, I can go like twice to each position. So that's an hour at most. And then I could leave 40 minutes, hopefully no more, and edit, maybe even be out before the speech is over or before the subway stops running.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So I imagine no flash, right? And then
Oh,
you
no flash. No flash.
and I imagine everyone's arms with mirrorless cameras, right? Because you don't want to make any sounds.
Well, 2 things. One, they for a big events like this where they're televised. I don't mean just C-SPAN regularly when they just have C-SPAN on like an automated, like a remote camera. They turn on lights that make the room, like I said, ISO 3200 5.6, and
Hmm.
maybe I'm a stop under, possibly underexposed at most. And with a 400, you're right on. Not even have to be worried about underexposure. And today's digital cameras have a lot of leeway.
Yeah.
So it's not too bad in that regard. Um,
And
I'm
then
sorry, what was your question? I'm blank.
I was gonna say, I imagine like the photographers are required to
All
use
right,
like
so
mirrorless cameras, right? So they don't
no,
make any sound.
there's no rule about that, and photographers, I think when I started doing it, some still had DSLRs, a couple, but most of us, just about everyone Just about everyone I know. This in DC, there's only, let's say, 25 to 50 photographers that work daily or fairly daily at either the Capitol or White House. At most, in a big event, you'll see them all. And virtually everyone's got a mirrorless camera these days.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I
And it's
heard.
not because it's required.
Right.
It's a big room. I don't know that it would be, even though it's a big room, and the way it's mic'd, I'm not sure it would make how much of an interference it would be.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched State of the Unions for years, and I don't think I've ever heard a camera
Right, we're
shutter
far
go
away.
off. Yeah.
I mean, the room, it's not a small room. I mean, the mic, I guess, on the people are not like omnidirectional, pick up, natural sound of the room, although they do obviously have natural sound to hear whatever the audience is doing.
Sure.
Um, I don't think it's an issue, but virtually everyone is switched. Not everyone, but virtually everyone. There's one guy who's not a he's a producer for a network, and he also is a still shooter, more for art. And he had a 4x5 speed graphics with him, and he's a very talented. I don't want to give his privacy. I don't want to give his name, but
Sure.
he brings his own still camera, even though he mostly works for a major network as a producer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
and he doesn't make much noise,
do you
with his
divide
speed
your
graphics.
time up between like shots of the president and then shots of the gallery? Like, 'cause I know there was a couple
Oh, I
outbursts and
should mention
stuff.
it's dark in the gallery, not because they
Oh, okay.
purposely do it, but because they make no effort to light it for TV. So
Sure.
when you shoot in the gallery, you shoot president's family in the gallery. This year, the U.S. men's hockey team I photographed in the gallery. It's dark, no ambiguity. It's dark, highest ISO that I feel comfortable with,
Yeah.
and I'm at 5.6 because I thought because I got my 100 to 400 as opposed to bringing my 400 to 8.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. And I know, Zach, you were down, not in the State of the Union, but you were down in DC at the same time. What were you covering?
I was outside freezing my feet off because I was at the People's State of the Union, which basically there was about, I think, 50 or 60 members of Congress who didn't go to the State of the Union, so they had their own kind of speeches one after another, and kind of the same idea as the senator would bring up somebody who was a pet issue that they were going to talk about, and then moved on to the next one, and it was just out on the White House lawn, or not White House lawn, the National Lawn, and you could see, or the National Mall, and you could see the Capitol in the background, and yeah, it was just very light. It went to midnight as well, and it was about. I think it got down to like 20 degrees. It was
Oof.
it was
I know a couple of
terrible.
photographers who were covering it. They came back into the office we work out of, and they all firmly said that it was very, very, very cold.
Yeah, and you couldn't move at all because it was so locked in. So it was literally like basically the space of this table for like 4 hours. Just one of
Uh,
those. It's such like I would rather any day of the week cover like a march or something like that in the cold or whatever. It was just
ugh.
it's always weird that you think that like that would be better like standing in one spot. But I got some okay photos. Security was terrible. Somebody who had like a MAGA hat on and stuff like that managed to get to the stage and grab the microphone away from a
Oh,
senator,
Wow.
oh,
which was like a moment of like,
oof.
oh, that could have been national news right there, unfortunately. And thank goodness the sound guy grabbed him and pulled
Oh
him
my God.
away. It was, yeah, anyway, I won't.
How can there be that many Congress people and no
There's
like
like 20, there was 20 at any given
bodyguards?
time kind of hanging around, and it was wild that there wasn't. I mean, the guy actually ran by Metro PD. So like Metro PD never moved once and didn't arrest him, didn't pull him aside. So
Oh my
that's its
God.
own statement about.
Was the Capitol Police there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if it was Capital or if it was Metro. I think it might have been Capital. I'm trying to remember what the cars were, because they were off in the distance enough, but they were standing around, and the guy jumped the fence and managed to get right to the stage. It was kind of wild. And it's also wild because it didn't make any news whatsoever. So, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Would you have rather been outside covering that or inside covering the State of the Union?
Oh, 100% inside. Not
Yeah.
only because I've never covered the State of the Union, and I've photographed all of these senators and Congress people a dozen times. It's
Yeah.
at like small podium events, kind of things like on the National Mall like a dozen times, and so it was just kind of like, okay, well, this is the thing. Be able to get 20 senators and updated photos for wire service purposes. It's useful, I mean,
Yeah.
it'll pay out in the long term, I think, is,
Sure.
which is unfortunately the way you kind of got to think about some of the things, because I have to drive up from Norfolk. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a drive.
yeah.
But yeah, Michael, get Zach into the State of Union next year.
Yeah, yeah.
Use your connections.
Were you with Zuma this year, or were you with?
I've worked for multiple places,
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Yeah.
including Zuma.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know if you were. I'm always curious on how the wire setups work and getting access and that sort of thing. Because like I
It,
shoot for Nerd Photo, and we're a very much smaller agency, but we feed to Zuma, and so it's a complicated.
I think there was a a NERP person there. I'm not
Yeah,
sure,
yeah. I wouldn't be
but
surprised.
you can. I would suggest if you're interested.
Mhm.
And I learned this the hard way. Like the first time, oh, I'd like to go, and then I found out how to do this. I mean, I
Mhm.
was working at the Capitol, but I didn't know the arrangements for the State of the Union. Then I found out. So my suggestion is you contact NER a couple months ahead of time and
Yeah.
say, I'd like to do this, so that when they announce the date, and as soon as the date's announced, contact the Senate Press Photographers Gallery and say, I want, I'm requesting a credential I'm requesting access so I can shoot this for NER, and chances are good you'll get in. I
Mhm.
mean, not that I, could prove anything.
I'll use your name. Okay.
Oh
Scott,
Quote
no,
Scott.
unquote.
that's not. I don't hold any
Michael said
weight
I
there.
could.
Yeah. Scott,
Anyways.
are you now that you're freshly freelance, are you signing with are you gonna like try to do some work with a wire service or something like that? Or are you just kind of trying to do assignment based stuff,
Yeah, no, so
type stuff?
I've signed up with Reuters, AP, New York Times, LA Times.
Yeah.
Um, I think the only one that I haven't is Getty, and that's because Getty, it seems like their assignment editors are per sports, so it kind of is a little more complicated. I'm not really sure who to reach out to,
Okay.
but hopefully the other ones will keep me busy. So
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
Yeah, now
Well, it's
that
good. I
you're
mean,
a
yeah.
freelancer, are you open to shooting things besides sports, or is it sports
Yeah, well, the
or
thing is that
nothing?
like I think in recent years I've been shooting a lot of sports, but at a newspaper, 50 to 70% of the time, I'm not shooting sports. I'm
Okay.
shooting news or food photography or portraits or empty lots that they're going to build a building on.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm in like, I'll gladly shoot an empty lot for AP or anyone now. It's like, no complaining anymore, but we used to bitch about it, but so yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of, get pigeonholed into something. It's like,
Sure.
for a long while, I would go to a photo conference and I would meet someone and be like, "Oh, I didn't know you shot sports," and then I meet someone else who's like, "Oh, I thought you only shot sports." So it just
Mhm.
depends on what they've seen of my work in the past, and
The
Yeah.
curse of being
Yeah.
good at something.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So newspapers force you to be a jack of all trades, but
Yeah.
I definitely think that my sports photography is probably is better than not discounting my other work, but I do love shooting sports, and I've gotten, I could do it in my sleep now, pretty much. So
So
There
it's
you
funny
go.
because it's like I feel that same way about a lot of photographers who I know your work, and I obviously I have two of your books, so obviously I know your
pleasure,
work,
sir.
but shooting from the hip, and I forget what the other one is, but it's I know your fire photography, your wildfire photography almost more than sports, just because I'm not a big sports person,
Right,
and
right.
so like obviously I know your like the style that you shoot in and everything like that, but it's always interesting like what people like know your work as, because they like saw one photo and it's like, oh, that guy's that type of photographer, and then it's so easy, it is genuinely so easy to get pigeonholed in
Yeah,
things. Like the number of just even like freelance work, and just like, oh, and people who know me for years and be like, would you shoot a conference like for us? And I'm like, yes, yes, I would be happy
exactly.
to. I literally, that's what I do for kind of a living. I do CPAC and TP,
Yeah,
like all the conferences. And I'm like, I spend probably most of my time inside a building with terrible lighting shooting politicians. Like, yeah, no,
yeah.
I'd be happy to get paid a lot more money to do it.
Yeah, it's like, and the cool thing is like my Common Ground project, the one I mentioned about
Yeah.
the farm that became a subdivision. Besides like it being published places and being a book, Media Storm did this great 7-minute piece on it, and so there's still like a lot of college professors who show that piece like early on in their class, And so really it's nice to kind of keep me relevant with the younger photographers.
Yeah.
And so I'll meet a lot of people who've seen that, and that's the only kind of reference they have to my work, which is, that's the cool thing about doing books or having something that exists online, is that it's, the online stuff I don't know about, but the books have permanence to them. And your book will end up someday at a used bookstore or at Goodwill, and someone else will see it. So
I mean, that's how I got into. I have my Sebastião Salgado book, the same book I had from middle, like would have been like ninth grade. That got me. That I'm like, that's the style I want to shoot in.
yeah,
That's I've never done. Once I dropped film, I stopped shooting, and that's the grainy kind of, Salgado's black and white work. And but I mean, that's how I think so many kids that now you can find access on the internet, obviously, and Instagram
Mhm.
is kind of the way. But like to
yeah,
actually find photojournalists on the on Instagram is kind of a tough pull sometimes
yeah.
because like none of our work gets like pushed a lot.
Oh, exactly. Like, and for me, like one of the biggest influences early in my career, or even before I started, like I came across a Cape Light by Joel Meyerowitz,
Mhm.
that book, and I just was like, oh my God, this is just amazing. And because I think when I started out in photography, like all I would shoot was silhouettes, reflections, shadows. I was afraid of people, so like I would go and shoot a building in downtown Chicago of the reflective windows or something, and I remember early on, I did a photo story on public sculptures in Chicago and no people in them at
Yeah.
all. Like, here's the Picasso, here's the Moreau, here's, whatever. And it's just like, oh my God, it's like you look back and I was delusional and I thought I was talented back then, but it was just like, didn't quite know what I was doing. So
Yeah.
it's always
Yeah.
humbling to go back and look at some of your early work or some of your work from last week sometimes. Yeah.
I know,
Or from
right?
yesterday. I don't want to talk. Yeah, but yeah.
So you shoot all kinds of things then, Scott. Have you shot politics?
Yeah, so when I was at the Chicago Tribune was during the, Barack Obama's presidency, first presidency. So I was at the Tribune until 2014. So I was at the inaugurations of Obama, and of course, whenever he came through town, we would follow him. So most of my political coverage, although I've done a lot of rallies of local politicians, a lot of it's like going to someone's house. Like I remember one of Joe Biden's State of the Unions, I went to a DACA recipient's home and they were watching it because he was making an announcement about DACA. And so I think, my coverage of a lot of politics is very local and how it affects people and doing kind of issue related stories on things that happen in DC. And I would love to, you know, go to Iowa, in 2028, and kind of, you know, drive around there in the ice and the snow. But so I do enjoy that, but it's like when I go to a political rally or a protest, I'm trying to work the edges. I'm not really looking for to, sign photos or people, I'm just looking for kind of moments that are kind of happening. Because when I shot Obama's inauguration, the first one, the Tribune, we sent 4 photographers. 3 of them were right on the stage or near the stage. And my job was to just roam them all. And I just sat up in front of these wonderful women one was from Buffalo, a couple were from Cleveland, and you just, their emotions throughout the speech, and tears were flowing and they were laughing and hugging. And it was just like just a beautiful moment. And that's the kind of things I enjoy doing, is just kind of being able to get out and roam around and find my moments. And, I've had plenty of moments like Michael where you're locked into a position and you just have to make the best of it. But obviously most of us, we just kind of like hunting for a photo and trying to find the best angle and, kind of make a layered image that tells the whole story in just one frame.
Yeah, no, that's the dream, right?
Yep.
So, Michael, you get done with the State of the Union, and are you filing your photos at the location, or do you file at home? Obviously, you have to get the imagery out that night, I presume.
So some photographers file straight from the camera to a hotspot or to an Ethernet, sometimes with a laptop in between, and they might or may not be edited. I find it easy just to go back to one of the room where we work out of at the Capitol, where the still photographers work out of, and work and put the transfer the images to my laptop, edit, and then file from there. I mean, history becomes excuse me, news becomes history is the phrase. So timeliness is good. The people who are filing literally from the camera to either a hotspot or something, they obviously have an advantage. I haven't done that. So as quick as possible is the advantage normally.
Yeah, we talked with a photo editor for our, I think, ABC, who mentioned kind of the workflow at major events wherein the photographer basically just beams their photo to someone who, back at the newsroom or back at the, wherever, and they ingest it and do the editing for the photographer right then and there. Were any of the photographers working under that kind of system that you knew about, or?
Um, so some photographers have Ethernet access, hardwired access. They could plug their laptop in.
Hmm.
Others might try to put it on their phone or use FTP from the camera to their through their phone to someplace. They have to make sure they
Yeah,
have um, a good signal and all that.
sure.
So yes, there are different photographers that are doing different things. The rovers probably not because they get only like 5, 10 minutes in. It'd be a little more just logistically, but it can be done.
Yeah.
I'm willing to take the hits of
Hmm.
not being the first one of the first 10 or 15 photographers. I mean, there's at least 20 something in the room
Right.
probably. So I'll never be first. I just accept that. And, that's what is.
Yeah, for the Super Bowl, we were had an Ethernet cable out of our camera into one of the new Sony
Right. Some do that
hotspot
too. Yes.
transmitters, and so I would just send back the key significant plays, maybe 10 a quarter. And it's like sometimes it depended on where you were in the stadium. Sometimes it would send in a second, sometimes it would be like 45 seconds. It all just depended on your luck of the bandwidth at that time. And I've always preferred to go and could put it on my laptop, and if I wanted to crop it a little bit or do something, because we had one editor who no longer is at the paper when I was at the San Francisco Chronicle, and he was doing a lot of our NBA finals coverage as editing and things like that, and he would just like do the oddest crops. He would take my photo and he would just crop it and be totally out of balance, or he would just like be like, why, what are you doing? It's just like, so, I'm one of those photographers where like, I hate, other people, touching my images or cropping them in a way or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it definitely, I prefer, to be in control for sure. And you probably do too, Michael.
I do because I mean, there are some editors and or photographers, if they edited my work, I'm sure it would be excellent with the output. But I do find if you're looking at the back of the camera or you're looking through the eyepiece of the camera, there are things you miss that you can see on like a 15-inch laptop screen. I mean, there's occasionally time it looks great in the camera, and then I put it on the laptop screen and said, "Up, it's not as sharp as I thought it was going to be."
Yeah.
Or look, sometimes you got it, you have it. So I'd rather do that if I have a choice.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thanks for giving us that enlightenment about kind of what goes in the process of shooting a State of the Union. Unless there are any other questions about shooting the actual event, I just want to touch on some stuff that came up in the news this week. I think what's most interesting here is that Nick Ut, who we've talked about extensively on this program, as we've done a review of what is it, the
The
stringer.
stringer. Yep.
Yeah, and we also talked about the topic in depth with academia, professors of photojournalism. But, Nick Ut filed a defamation lawsuit against Netflix, Netflix France, and Seven for like 100,000 euros, I believe. And basically, he's filing this defamation lawsuit in France. And so, kind of want to get your guys' take on it. What do you think of the lawsuit? What do you think of the Nick Ut case in general? Do you have any opinions on the Stringer film? Have you seen the Stringer? Kind of what are your thoughts on all those things? Whoever wants to go first?
I guess I'll go. I saw the stringer maybe about 2 months ago. And the thing is, I was totally manipulated by the movie. I'm like, whenever you see something in movie form, it just adds this level of credence to it that it might not really be real. Like I remember seeing Oliver Stone's JFK back in the day. And like, you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, look at that. That's what happened. That was what
Yeah.
happened, and
Yeah.
and so it's just one of those situations where I have no idea. I have no idea what happened. I've met Nick many, many times. I saw him at Perpignan. He was brought up on stage and kind of, big support there. But I don't know what happened there. Like the movie makes it seem plausible, but there's definitely no solid, evidence either way. So I thought it was pretty ballsy by Seven and um, to go out there and put the film out there and basically say this is the truth.
Mhm.
But I don't know how they're going to prove one way or another if he took the photo or not. It's like how are they going to prove, and so I am not a lawyer, and that I doubt that there's any people who are going to be able to say yes, Nick took this photo, so you deserve the damages. I don't know, but you know, on kind of the tangential side of it, it's exciting to see photojournalism be talked about in circles where it's normally not, and just to see what it was like during the Vietnam War and things like that. And I'm really, really good friends with Dave Burnett, so it's always interesting to see his perspective.
Mhm.
And he's one of the you know most trustworthy, accomplished photojournalists in history. So I guess I can lean towards Dave's opinion. He's the only one that I really know who was there. So it's interesting and a fascinating case study. I know people. I have some friends who are just so passionate about it on both sides, and
Yeah.
but I have no horse in the race, and I really have nothing to base my opinion on. I just kind of watch from the sideline, but it is a fascinating case study for sure.
What is Dave's opinion on it?
He says that Nick made the photo. He was there, and um, I know for a long time, like I was under the impression that that Dave Burnett was in Nick's photo or of the
Hmm.
Napalm Girl photo. But then I think recently I heard that wasn't, because changing film, there's a photographer on the right changing film during the Napalm Girl. And I always thought that was Dave Burnett, but apparently it's not. It was another photographer. I'm not sure. So um, but the reenactment they did during the movie makes it seem like Nick didn't take the photo, but who knows? But if he did take the photo, it's tragic both ways, really.
Sure.
If Nick took the photo or the stringer took the photo, it's there definitely an injustice was done, and there was a lot of injustice done to the stringers back in those times, and stringers nowadays not getting the proper credit. So, but overall, just fascinating and just interesting to watch.
Well,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
interesting, I did a lot of reading about it. I heard Nick talk at Perpignan last year. He gave a hour-long talk, which was interesting. They didn't really talk about this controversy. Nowadays, our digital cameras put metadata in that you could then say what camera it came from, and you according to how you've set it up. Back then, you couldn't do it on film, but I read what part of my reading is they used to do some. They used to take a file and file down the opening for the behind the lens, and everyone would have it would end up being a very unique analog-ish opening that your film would then show this little light leak or a little extra of the image, and every camera was different because you couldn't do it. It wasn't machine done. That was exactly the same. But even that didn't prove whose camera, who was holding the camera and stuff like that. And you're right, it's unfortunate we can't know for sure. Had it been done in the digital age, the metadata, unless he was borrowing a camera, the metadata would just tell
Right.
us.
Yeah. I mean, if the camera had GPS on it, right, that would also kind of identify where the person
Well, you
was. I
have to know
mean,
who's holding the camera. I mean, that's the other, that you never know who's holding a camera theoretically, but
sure.
it's sad. I wish we just knew, I feel sorry for Nick because he's whatever, who knows? I don't know the answer. It wasn't there.
I know, right?
So,
None of us were, right? But I
right,
think,
exactly.
the, and, we talked about this on the show. I think the documentary, despite its overall quality, does make a compelling argument, right? And I know there are other arguments out there. The AP put out their report, and, there's a lot of different voices that talking about this. But if you look at it from, I'd say, the surface level, the vast majority of people who watch the stringer aren't going to do extra research, right? They're going to take what the stringer presents as face value and then build their opinion off on that. And, it's really tough to say like he did take the photo when you just look at kind of that 3D analysis they did at the end of the photo. So I'm very eager to watch this case play out because I want to see how he defends himself, right? Because they're both are going to make their, arguments in front of a court, in front of a judge, jury. I don't know if they were going to have a jury or if it's just going to be a judge decision, but it'll be interesting to see like what he actually says to say like, no, I did take this, and try and defend himself and defend the accusations because he's going to have to, I imagine, in order to make the claim stick. But we'll
Yeah, I
see.
don't, I
We'll
don't,
see.
I don't know how, I don't know how French libel law or defamation law works. In the UK, he would have a very good case. Like having worked for BBC and gone through literally not when we were never sued, but like we had to basically do our journalism to the point um, that we weren't going to get sued by the rich, very wealthy billionaires and that sort of thing that love to sue that we were usually investigating. And like what Utz lawyers claims that film portrays the photographer as a quote shameless liar who over the years has skillfully cultivated a narrative that he knew to be false and stolen and a stolen attribution and present him as a man who built his reputation on an act of appropriation and knowingly persists in this betrayal. I don't think the film proved that. I think it asked questions, but the problem is it didn't portray itself as like, hey, we're just asking questions here, kind of thing. It portrayed as we know the answer. And it tried to do that it tried to do that. I think it failed. Like we did a very, I was very passionate about it on the thing. I was somewhat convinced by the film though, and then I read Burnett's lengthy essay explaining things kind of in detail. And I was just, well, that actually explains everything and like reworking things. And so I think that they have a very good case. He's not even, I don't know what, again, like France could be very different than the UK or obviously America. €100,000 is not a lot of money to sue for a defamation case. That to me, it's like this is his livelihood. This is what he's known for. If you obviously he's done an incredible amount of other work in his life, but it's just like if somebody said that I didn't take that one photo that I'm known for, that's what you built so much of your career
I
on.
wonder
So I
how they
mean,
came up with $100,000 number. Why that?
yeah.
Why not a million?
I
I have
mean,
no clue.
I would bet it's some like legal, just like
Ah,
there's a certain amount.
yes,
Like we've
yes.
tried other cases in the past. We know that like judges or
Or
juries
maybe
or
different
wherever.
laws apply according to the
Yeah,
amount of money,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
I don't know.
Again, I'm
From
talking
from what I
completely
read
out of
on the
ignorance. Yeah.
from what I read on, I think it may have been mentioned in the story, or at least the
Mhm.
comments talked about it. It was more like
Mhm.
um, it wasn't meant for the money. It was more meant to like put
It's
out
like suing.
a
It's like a lot of court cases will just be like we're suing for $1 just to get them to
yeah.
admit there's wrong.
Hmm.
I mean, one thing that I hope is whenever there's always the joke investigations like go ahead and sue me. I can't wait until a deposition to get the information out and to be able to demand documents. I hope that in this lawsuit he's able to get more information and kind of behind the scenes stuff on how this film got to the point of deciding to portray him because I mean they in the UK we were there was one case actually I was involved in the Chevron case technically there's a massive Chevron case where Chevron was being sued by Ecuador natives and it was like a 15-year long libel kind of like not maybe not libel but like court case and like my journalist emails were somehow outed in that is during the BBC. Thankfully, obviously, I didn't say anything wrong, but it was just like it's insane that journalists' emails were able to be outed. And but it would be fascinating to see like their conversations behind the scenes on what like how they're talking about him and how they're being like, oh, we got to get this guy. I mean, like there's just so many things that you learn that I don't think that they know that the creators of the Stringer have any idea on how to do actual investigative journalism, and the way they talked about things on camera, the way they didn't portray things, they didn't show their evidence, which is the biggest thing that you got to do in a film. So it'll be fascinating to see like if there is like emails that come out and that sort of thing. That's what I'm hoping for because I would love to see how they decided to, because I still don't even understand why they decided to make this film. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully the ownership and the kind of chain of custody with regard to who takes an actual photo won't be an issue in the future because the program Photo Mechanic is going to be supporting C2PA, which is the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, and basically, or authenticity, I should say, and basically this is building in content authenticity into the program itself, so that you can essentially not only, caption a photo, right, and put your name on it, but have these sort of built-in bits, if you will, that sort of designate that this is your picture, your
That it came
metadata,
from your
basically.
camera. It came from a specific camera.
Specific camera, is that what it is?
I believe so, because they can't tell what the human is there. You can only
Right.
tell what the camera it came from.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So have either of you used Photo Mechanic and or messed around with this particular aspect of it?
I
No,
think
I've
all
been using.
photojournalists live in photo
Yeah,
mechanic,
yeah,
at least for part of their workflow, if not a lot of it.
yeah. No, but I've never. I reading that article. I didn't even know that existed. And of course, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Like I was in the short-lived NFT space for a while, non-fungible
Okay.
tokens, and like the advantage of that people kind of preached was the provenance of it.
Yeah.
Where an image goes on the blockchain and it proves that whoever, well, you could steal a photo, right, and put your name on it, but if you're an honest person and you minted a photo on as an NFT on the blockchain, your name will always be attached to it, and
Right.
so it definitely is something that would be nice to have some way to keep that as an image goes through its lifespan. But Michael's right. It's like you know no one's ever going to know. You can lie who took a photo and
hmm
attach it to the software. But it's a good first step, or a good
Well, it could
it's not
also
a
say that it's not AI. It could be proof
Yeah.
that it's not an AI generated photo if it could be tied to a camera.
Yeah.
that's a
So that's
great point.
valuable or will become more valuable over
Yeah,
time, I
that
imagine.
seems like that's the most valuable part of it.
Yeah. Content authenticity is something that Adobe has actually been working on pretty heavily because, of course, they're the industry standard for many different visual information mediums and programs. So they've taken upon themselves to create kind of like an open source, open licensable method by which to kind of verify the authenticity of images. So this isn't out yet, I should say. It's still being developed. So, probably in the next couple updates, you're going to get to see this and actually get to play with it yourself. So I'll be eager to see kind of, as people who use it on a regular basis,
You,
what you
you
think
you
about it.
also need a camera that supports it. So it's not uniformly supported by all cameras. So that
Okay.
that it may take another
So,
a generation or next iteration of cameras before you have a lot of cameras that support this because you
Sure.
need the full chain from the camera to photo mechanic.
Right.
yeah. It's also the different level. I mean, I think that there's the attribution and not AI level, and then there's the attachment to the camera thing. I understand. I use Lightroom for the most part,
Ditto.
and yeah, and so that's something that I really like is because I'm obsessive about not using AI and not having it attached to my work in any way, shape, and form beyond just being good practice as a photojournalist. And it is a huge issue when you go on threads, you go on whatever, anytime there's like a really good photo, be like, oh well, it's AI. And if you have that full edit, which is the biggest thing I like about it, is that it will supposedly, at least, I mean, this is my understanding of it, according to Adobe, is that it tracks your edits through there. So if you're doing any extreme edits and throwing, I barely ever even open up Photoshop at all unless it's to actually design something or whatever, because I'm terrible at InDesign. And so what I'm hopeful is that what it'll do is it'll kind of prove, like, sometimes you see some photos and you're like, how much editing did they do on this? And like, when does it stop being a piece of art, or when does it start being a piece of art and not being a photojournalist's work? It's always that kind of question, and that's something, at least, like, we can have the conversation about that as a separate thing, but at least we have that kind of documenting that you don't have to do everything in camera, obviously, but like, there's a certain level of editing that, like, basically, like, unless I could do something pretty easily in the dark room, that's kind of my level of editing. So.
Yeah.
It would be cool if, like, embedded in the metadata were like the 10 photos you took before it and the 10 photos you took after it. And you'd almost kind of like a
Big file
context just
sizes.
to kind
That
of
would be
see.
great.
that'd be amazing.
Well, then it's a
Yeah, I got
space issue, I guess,
Yeah,
for the for
yeah.
an embedded small RAW of some sort. I
Yes.
mean,
With the
JPEG.
prices of solid state drives right now. Oh my God. Has
a.
anyone looked at that market? Oh, jeez.
Be going back to 24 frames on a, one memory card.
I hate it. I just started shooting 4K video for a lot of things. What I'll do is I'll set up a camera, shoot film video of the event, and then I'll use my two other cameras to shoot stills
Yeah.
of it, which is an insane workload, but it's it's the way the market is right now, and that sort of thing is like for me. And so yeah, no, the hard drive space, especially as I'm shooting 4K for everything on my Nikons,
Yeah.
it's evil.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. Like,
I just got recently did a conference where I was shooting video and photo just because that's how it is, right? They're not going to splurge on two separate people to do two separate things. It's going to be you're going to do both by yourself because you
Yeah.
can.
yeah. Well, like I used to shoot Michael Jordan in the NBA Finals on 10 rolls of film or 9 rolls of
Mhm.
film so you could
Yeah.
fit it in the wing winch. And, now I shoot 20,000 photos at an NBA game, it's just because you can, and it's
Do
just
you
The
like,
keep do
culling
you
is crazy.
well, the thing
That's
is,
where
yeah,
I
you
lose my
just,
time.
yeah, you just tag the good plays on your camera. And then like I look at probably 1% of my take after every game because all we care about is the significant plays of the game.
Yeah.
do you keep everything?
Yeah.
You keep every file. Okay,
Yeah.
because I remember the last time we did the show many years, obviously different atmosphere. I'm trying to remember. I wish I could remember which photographer we were talking to. And it's like, oh no, I don't keep anything. I keep my like edits and I keep the raws of those edits and then I delete everything. And I was
Uh,
like horrified by that
yes.
Well,
idea. I
I
mean, mind
shoot
you, I
120. I shoot at least 125,000 frames a year, and I'm sure the sports photographers do
yeah.
even more.
Oh my
A
God, yeah,
week.
It's huge.
yeah,
No, I cull out all the bad shots.
Hmm.
At some point you say no one's ever. You could reasonably think. I mean, for talking heads, I figure I get 3 to 4
yeah.
percent
Okay,
are worth filing,
yeah,
and that's because their mouth is in a weird position. They're something. Like
yeah,
common sense. It's also space. It's crazy now the space you're talking. At
yeah,
46 or 50 megapixel cameras.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shooting raw.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You gotta be conscious of those types of things. I actually keep everything, but I don't shoot nearly as much as you guys do. So, but I do shoot 8K video, so that eats up a lot
That's
of my
big.
space. When
That's
I'm doing a
insane.
film or something like that, like this last film I did, it was about 13 terabytes of video, and that was 6K for
Uh,
my film. So, but then that's a feature film, so that's a whole different ball game. But yeah, awesome guys. Well, again, I don't use Photo Mechanic as much, but then again, I'm not a working full-time photojournalist. I do want to get back into that space though, so maybe I'll have to get the program again when I do. But I'm pretty comfortable with Bridge. I just use Bridge for
I
my
know people
stuff.
use Bridge to put for metadata for videos.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
you can do that. For sure, for sure. All right, guys. Well, hey, this has been a great conversation. Talked about a lot of stuff. Before we say goodbye to y'all, is there anything else you'd like to highlight or send people towards so they can learn more about you and your work? We'll start with you, Michael.
What, repeat the question. What do you,
Where would you like to send anyone who might want to learn more about you or your work? Is like a website
oh,
or
yeah, splitstonemedia .com, splitstonemedia.com. And from there, they can figure out whatever they want. Thank you,
okay,
Francie.
of course. Scott?
I can be found on all the major social media networks as Scott Strazzante, but I've just started a Substack. I used to do a blog called Shooting from the Hip back in the day, the Chicago Tribune. So I've brought that back in Substack form. So I'm gonna, pretty much chronicle my journey as a freelancer and just kind of all my little side hustles and personal projects and street photography and stuff. So yeah, if you can, find me on Substack, it'd be fun to interact with you there.
Nice. You should do a vlog and learn all the Gen Alpha language so you can be like with your selfie camera, be like, yo, 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 what it is? It's your boy Scott here. Out of freelance shoot. Like, comment, subscribe. Riz me up, guys.
Yeah, you give my kids a stroke if I did that. So I think I'll stick with my boomer stuff.
There you go. I was gonna say on the whole like blockchain, not blockchain. Well, I was gonna mention blockchain. I was gonna say on the content authenticity thing. I have a friend of mine who works with the Government Blockchain Association, and blockchain is kind of pretty cool when you like learn about it and its ability to basically like verify things. And so there might be a future where your photograph is saved onto the blockchain, right? And then there's that verifiable proof that what you shot is associated with you, and you can't invalidate that. So
Yeah,
that could
because
be a way in the future.
yeah. In 100 years, are these external hard drives where my photos are, are they going to be accessible? Is the cloud going to still be, or who's even going to, like once I die, who's going to, like my kids don't care. They're not going to track down my photos in the cloud, so it's just, you definitely try to find some permanence where you can for sure.
Yeah,
There
just
is
put
an
it up.
archive group. I forget the name. I'm blanking on the name for photographers who want to archive their stuff. There's some group that deals with that, and I can't. I'm blanking on the name.
Just donate all your stuff to the Library of Congress.
There you go.
Oh God. And then get sued when you want to use it in the future because Getty licensed it. That poor I forget her name, photographer who got sued by Getty, I think it was, because she donated her catalog to the library. And anyway, but I told my best friend whose daughter is my de facto niece, and I told her, I'm like, when I die she gets my archives, and basically my friend just flipped me off and was just like, screw you, I don't want to deal with that mess. Like, you have no organization, your hard drives. And so like that has been like, okay, I need to start organizing. Before I before I buy, I got 20 years. My grandfather died when I was 65, so like I got 20 years, and before I'll knock it off. But yeah.
There you go.
Hopefully by then it'll be back on laser discs or something.
Well, you always hear about like Microsoft coming out with some like piece of glass that
Crystal
can store, like
I remember
1,000
that.
terabytes or whatever. So we'll see. It's still vaporware until it actually comes out. But Zach, I know you did some shoots last week. Anything you want to highlight that is on your platform that people should go check out?
Visu.news. It's a Substack, visunews.substack.com, but always Visu.news. I'm probably going to move to WordPress pretty soon. Now that Substack has decided to join, I think it was with Polymarket. They're going to start feeding everything into Polymarket. Well, did you hear AP? I feel like this is something we can talk about in another episode, but AP signed a deal with Kalashi, which is another predictive marketing or predictive gambling or whatever they call it. Yeah, and I can't. The idea to do that is beyond me. But anyway, that's
fun times.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to be on the show and talk about all the amazing things that you're doing, and to join us here at the Roundtable for Around the Lens, episode 14 of Roundtable Discussions. I'm your host, David J. Murphy, and for Zach, Scott, and Michael, we'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody.